Hi. So, good evening and welcome to today's colloquium. Uh, as you saw from the title, and also probably you saw from the very nicely written the abstract, that today's colloquium speaker is going to address something very, very pertinent question, especially to this establishment. Quite often, as a standard textbook kind of definitions, we talk about science, engineering, and technology and their boundaries and how one leads to the other. Science, you do a kind of very, like a reasoned investigation, not really bothering about what the outcome or what outcome is fine, but how it is going to be kind of applied. Technologies are supposed to pick up these concepts and kind of find a way to kind of do systems which will actually help the person on the street. And engineers are supposed to kind of optimize the resources of these products. It could be power, it could be cost, could be weight, and so on and so forth. Now, often these boundaries kind of get etched in one's mind, and then we, of course, do our things what we are supposed to be doing, but we are obviously living in these vertical walls. The speaker today wants to really kind of address this issue, how the spin-offs could be more easily and, kind of transferred from one phase to another phase. Is it bound or, let us say, blocked by some kind of guidelines, some kind of rules, regulations of the institute? Are there kind of people who help to kind of interface between these two entities so that the things come out which will actually help society at large? So it's a very important question, not only to society at large and most importantly to our own organization. So without taking, I think, more of speaker's time, firstly, let me thank GRK, Professor G. Ravindra Kumar, to actually bring the speaker here to our campus. And also, therefore, I request him to kind of formally introduce the speaker and conduct rest of the proceedings. GR.
Thank you, Satya. And just to follow up, the winds of change have been blowing for quite some time, even through a hallowed institution like TIFR. We've been asked over the last more than 10 years that, you do great stuff when somebody walks through these labs and what we have, what we are doing, cutting edge science powered by cutting edge technology. But why doesn't any of it go anywhere? Well, it goes to us further our science, but why doesn't it go somewhere else? So that's been a question that so many people who fund us, who also find us interesting, but they think that we can be more interesting than just doing our work. They've been asking this. So it's a great thing that we have today an eminent speaker who has seen it all, who has seen how science can be applied in different areas and how these, the enabling of the scientific work in technology domain actually happens. And he has succeeded remarkably in doing that. So it's a pleasure to have you at Rangnekar. So formal introduction, though there are some informal bits I'll come towards the end. He's a product of IIT Bombay long ago, right? And then he decided to do an MBA, as was the, I think, the trend in those days. And IIT plus IIM, Ahmedabad, was a passport to everything in life. So he did the same. And indeed, he has traveled all over the world because of the competence that he got in these two institutions. So his most sort of well-known position is, of course, in the Indian context, he is the Dean of the Indian School of Business, which I think was, they started this to match and probably exceed the IIMs, and probably it has succeeded dramatically in that venture. So he has been the Dean there. He has worked in lots of companies. I mean, currently he is on the managing boards of various institutions. For example, IIIT Hyderabad. He's a member of the Telangana Hub, the T Hub as it's called. And prior to joining ISB, he was in Hong Kong for over 20 years with Price Waterhouse. He was leading the Asian operations, the Asian operations of many of these companies. For 20 years, I think he was in Hong Kong. And then now the latest avatar is that he is the Director General of the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. So this is a venture of the Telangana government. And in Hyderabad, if you go, you see that there's a huge buzz about, what's happening, whether it's in the pharma sector, whether it's in the IT, Some of you may be surprised that even in the aerospace, there are lots of startups which are in Hyderabad. So I think he's at the right place to trigger more, evolutions in and around that region. And so it's really, I think he's going to tell us something very, very exciting today. But to say something about I asked him, when did you come to TIFR? He said, oh, long ago. I said, how long ago? Oh, really long ago. So he's probably going to tell you. And he did not visit during the day. He was a nightly visitor between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. So you can guess what he was doing here, right? Not something that you're thinking of, but he came to use the computer system, and the time that was given to them was only between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning. So when I asked him, you walked into the canteen here, do you recognize anything? He said, I came in the night, so I never entered the canteen. So today he did, and he's also seen lots of labs. So welcome and look forward to your talk.
Thank you. And I don't know which one to use, so I'll keep this aside for the moment. Yeah. Use this one. Good afternoon. So as you know, I came here 50 years ago.
50.
50. 73, in fact. In those days, there is an echo effect. There still is an echo effect, right? No, I don't have a mobile. My mobile is there. Do you have any problem with my using the other one? Yes. Okay, I think this is a little better. So in those days, I used to work for ACC, and cement was a controlled commodity. And there was a fixed amount of price you got for distribution. And as an operations researcher, I developed a model to optimize this. And there was no other computer in the country which could handle that. And TIFR you had to come and stand in the queue, means put your product in the queue at 2 o'clock. So actually we used to kind of coming at about 1:30 to be first in the queue. And then stay till 4 o'clock. Sometimes what used to happen is the damn thing would bounce. Then you try and correct it in the middle of the night and put it back in with the hope that you got it. So I've spent many fascinating nights here. But it was, even in those days, for all of us, TIFR was something, wow, man, this is something great. This is something amazing. So when I had a chance to visit TIFR in Hyderabad, and on your behalf, let me invite them. I mean, that's a great campus, and certainly we hope to do a lot of things together. And Ravi offered that you're coming to Bombay, come TIFR. I jumped at that opportunity. To me, this has always been the epitome of high quality fundamental research. But what I found today was that you are also a truly outstanding engineering, design, and manufacturing company. It's shocking that somebody like me, who I think knows a little more about science institutions, was so ignorant about your capabilities and abilities, was so ignorant about the kind of work that you people are doing. So as it is to come to TIFR was a little worrying. Then while I was coming here to say, oh, people like Homi Baba and others have given talks there, get more depressed. Then I see all of you and the work you do. And now I'm really feeling there. So I want to be very honest. I'm honestly petrified and scared. And I don't know whether I should be standing here and talking. Nothing that I'm going to talk is what you would consider as scientific. There is no rigorous analysis. There is no data-driven evaluation. This is one person's observations over a roughly 20-year period. Right? So that's all it is. I'm desperately trying to lower your expectations. Please understand. Because I don't want to, after all that, to feel that. But I think what's happening is that we are in a very unique place. And therefore, we should, all of us, especially I'm delighted to see so many of the young people here. I'm assuming many of you are PhD students. It's really good for us to understand and think about this. Okay. So, lower your expectations, relax, sit back. The world goes through fads from time to time. To me, a fad is an uncritical acceptance of an idea which never really delivers on its promise. So remember metaverse? Thousands of people were buying properties, were selling on the net and talking of living in a virtual city. I don't know what. By the way, yesterday they announced some Genverse or something like that. Another new fad. But that kind of fad had no real value when you look at it. It just came. Cryptocurrency. Is it a fad? Is it a trend? Is it a future? I don't know. But again, its expectations and the kind of transformation is certainly not having been. Remember .com? Any of you old enough to remember .com? Stickiness, eyeballs, all kinds of nonsensical ideas were thrown about roughly a little over 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, around 2019 to 2001, 2002. And, you know, all kinds of changes were expected. However, what was promised in .com has now more or less become reality. So some fads take a lot of time and develop over that time. Take EdTech. During COVID, everything EdTech became the fad. And everyone thought. Today, there is at least one EdTech whose name has become a four-letter word, literally and figuratively, whose valuation certainly is a fad. Right? So, I think we have to understand that there are fads that come in, and those fads have an influence on life. Why am I doing this? What is the relevance of this? So guys on the Zoom, you were lucky so far. You didn't have to listen. You were enjoying life. Now tumhara bhi chale gaya. Don't blame me. Okay. So why am I talking about facts? Because I think and I worry that translational research is becoming a fad. When does a thing become a fad? Things become a fad when we underestimate the challenges of it and over glamorize the benefits. And today, I fear and worry that that's what we are doing with transformation, with transforming science, translational science, getting results out of it. Let me be very clear. I'm an extremely passionate believer in translation research. I think it's a tremendous idea. It's a great opportunity. Should I put this a little lower? And I think it has enormous potential for us as a country, provided we do it well. And therefore, if we do want to do it well, we have to first understand what is involved in it. What are some of the challenges? What is working? What is not working? What can we do to make it? And that is what I want to do. I want to talk about the realities and the real challenges of translation research and start this dialogue and thinking amongst all of us as to how are we going to make it a lot better. So let me start with my first point. And that first point is you cannot create translational research based on second-grade fundamental research. For us to want to be successful in translational research, we have to invest a lot more in fundamental research. We cannot take the existing pie and cut out a part of it for translation research. That will be a The recently announced National Research Foundation hopefully is a step in that right direction. They're thinking of adding extra money. I think even part of that money should come in for fundamental research. But this is a point that is generally missed by many. And that's a dangerous point. You simply cannot. My own feeling is that actually the reason why we are not doing as much translation research is because we are not doing as much of high quality fundamental research. You are perhaps one of the few exceptions. There are a few others, but not as many. In Hyderabad alone, there are 41 national research institutes. And I think I've visited at least plus of those. I can't say the same thing. So that's, in my opinion, that's my first thing, that we have to invest in basic research if we want to be successful. My second, who should do translation? What we forget is many of you come here to do research because you are fascinated by something that you want to learn more about. You come here to push the boundary of knowledge. You come here to learn more about something that fascinates you. And you honestly don't care about who's going to use it, where it's going to be, and what's going to happen. And God bless you. If that is what you are a true researcher. That's perfectly fine. There is a completely different kind of a human being who looks at research being done and say, you know what, I can put this to use somewhere. Sometimes that boundary doesn't necessarily exist. We have talked about some of the work that is actually being done here, where some of you, I have to say, today was a phenomenal, it's like a little child in a candy shop. The kind of opportunities that I see now and the kind of phenomenal, but those are relatively rare. Relatively, it's very rare to find a top scientist who also has a great ability in looking at its applications. There are, and that's a great bonus, but very often there are people who will think of an innovation as completely different from that of a. So this person whose innovation is looking to solve a real life practical problem using somebody else's research. The researcher is thinking of just pushing the boundaries. Also, very often an innovation requires us to bring more than just that research together, and therefore involves multiplicity of disciplines. Then there is a third person. Now, I may actually think, after meeting with many of these, maybe we can use it there. So I'm being an innovator. But I may not have the courage to put my money where my idea is. I may not have an ability to physically create an entity and to go out and sell it. So the third puzzle in this is entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur can quite often be different from an innovator. An innovator is a guy who has an idea. This is great, man. We can do it. I sometimes feel that I'm perhaps not even a great, but in that category, I don't have the courage to be enough. And then there is a fourth, which is the industrialist, who then scales up that entrepreneur's ideas to a much higher. So these are four completely different characteristics in the translation of research. And if we do not understand those four different characteristics, we are not going to solve this problem. For the rest of this talk, I'm not going to talk about the industrialists. I'll leave that when I go back to the business school. So that's the whole philosophy of growth of organizations, etc., etc. There are many theories and there are many, I will leave that side. But let us focus on those first three characteristics. Research, idea generation, innovation, finding a use for it, enterprise making a profitable business. So let me use the TRL language for a while. What does a researcher do? They predominantly operate in TRL 1 to 3 domain. What does an innovator do? The innovator looks at applications of that research and in an ideal world, can I do a prototype? So typically between 4 and 5, TRL levels 4 and 5. After that, somebody has to do the validation. Somebody has to demonstrate that, somebody has to develop that, and then it has to be deployed. The entrepreneur is very happy to deploy it. But the validation, the demonstration, and the development, so from 5 to 7, 8, is to some extent a valley of death. We find very, very few people in that space. Because it involves a lot of, look at it, when you want to commercially put something out, what's the first thing it must do? It must be technically feasible. Then it must be usable. Very often, we produce a product from a product point of view. We don't think of its usability. I was telling some of you about one startup I dealt with, who said, I've got this great app, for people who get a heart attack. I said, oh, really? Yeah. When you get a heart attack, open my app and put it to your chest. The doctor started laughing. He says, throw this guy out. Don't waste my time. Because this poor idiot had not, he came from AI/ML mindset. He collected a bit of data and he was thinking he was going to do it without any understanding of how the real life world works. And especially for applications in health, in agriculture, we get many applications in agriculture, great AI/ML ideas. People who have never seen what a rice paddy field is. So he's put sensors. I said, what happens when the field is flooded with water? He said, what? Water. So, what thought of it? His sensor had no ability. So, that is where the value of death occurs. He had a good idea. The idea needs to be developed. So what happens is in that middle portion, first of all, even before that middle portion, in the validation, in the prototype development itself, we need somebody who can understand the research and say, hey, this is where it can be. Then next step is we need somebody who knows how is this going to be validated. And this is where it's most difficult to find. Because these are people who must understand the science and who must understand the practice. And increasingly what's happening is we are finding people who are deep and very good in science, deep and very good in manufacturing, engineering, etc., but really are not able to talk to each other. And the reason I'm bringing all of this is those of you who are PhD students, but who want a career outside of research, you are part of the solution. Because you understand the research, you understand the quality of research, you understand the implications of research, and you understand its applications. And you are likely to be that key ingredient that's going to help us to solve this. So let me take an example, a real example. And I'm going to take a successful example. I can give you hundreds of unsuccessful examples because they don't really work. Point it. Here is a young person who is, it's actually a husband and wife couple, both of whom are PhDs from IIT Madras. So they used electromyography, surface electromyograph of bulk muscles. They used the technology of range of motion monitoring, and they use AI/ML. Now remember, three completely different technologies and research. Where is electromyography, where is range of motion, and where is AI? And they say, you know what? We can use this to measure muscle and joint defects if you fall, if you get injured, or post-surgery, or in neurological cases. So really brilliant innovation coming from three very disparate technologies. As luck would have it, they are very good, and they actually develop a prototype which is good. We took them to doctors and hospitals. First thing is, a large number of doctors, I mean, doctors who, even I was there, they were not aware. First thing, actually, sorry, let me back. We first sat them down with physiotherapists and say, yeah, you better understand from the physiotherapist what. So physiotherapists, hey, when somebody comes to us and says, I've got a muscle sprain, we cannot measure what's the muscle sprain. I cannot measure whether this exercise helps you or that exercise has helped you. And the only way I know today whether you have got cured or not is when it stops paining. Now we can actually monitor the extent of that muscle recovery, the extent of that joint. So the physiotherapists were absolutely thrilled. So then we started putting in data from the physiotherapists. Let's take samples, let's say people, so far so good. But we are now, because we went to a physiotherapist, we are looking at their injuries. Then we expose them to doctors. And obviously neurologists were excited because neurological disorders you can find. Cardiologists were excited. Orthopedists were excited because gynecologists were excited. Apparently, after pregnancy, these muscles become weak, and therefore, how do you those muscles? Something they did not know. But here is a product which seems to be, finding universal. So far, so good. Right? Now comes the next step. So I talked to this couple and said, tell me, what are you? Are you innovators or manufacturers? No, we are innovators. We are scientists in this field. Who is going to manufacture this? We are. Wait a minute. You said you are innovators. Why are you manufacturing it? But there is nobody else to manufacture. What is happening also in this world? If you take these know-hows, typically, if you take the share of the value, the scientist who conceived of this gets the least share of the value. Typically in single digits and typically in low single digits, 1 to 3% max, if you are lucky. Otherwise, they'll say, anyway, you publish the paper. Right? As you go further down the value chain, the value increases. So the people who are going to manufacture and distribute are probably going to take 30, 40, 50% of value. So this is where now this person's greed comes in. He says, no, I want to manufacture. So now we are dealing with human greed and not, all so far we are all talking of logical, simple things, but what happens? Second challenge. I take you to a doctor, I take you to a hospital, and say, okay, you have a gynecology hospital, you want to try this, fine. I'll give you this 10 machines and you please tell me how. Go. Next challenge is, what share of profits do I get? Do I get my cost reimbursed? Do I get this equipment for free? Do I get a royalty? Do I get equity? Again, a huge difference in thinking between the innovator and the hospital. And there are no standards. So I would love if some of you can work with us to develop those standards. There is no one standard, but we need to develop some framework. To say, okay, if you're an ideas person, you get about 1%. If you're missing, it's 10%. So so right now, this outstandingly brilliant idea. Oh, one more thing. If he has to do all these, so which market are you going to put this in? US market. Have you looked at the regulations in US market? No. How do you know this is going to be approved in US FDA? So now we have to go and do, for which we have to do those tests, for which there is money required, for which then investor will say, give me a share of it. I don't want to give. So great ideas do not fail because they are bad ideas. They fail because of human failure. They fail because of our egos. They fail because of our refusal to accept our limitations and our inability to do it. They fail because of our refusal to come together and collaborate. Nothing goes so I think, product design, regulatory approvals. Now, imagine I have produced this, whatever this is. Oops, that somebody says. I can produce one, or as you people are talking, you can produce 5, 10, 15, 20. If you had to produce it day in, day out, 1,000 a day, 365 days of the same quality, distribute it across the world, maintain it when it goes wrong, are you going to do it? Is that your priority? So how do we find the right partner? Those become the real problems. The problems are not technically humongous. The problems are about verification. The problems are about trust building. The problems are about legal frameworks so that I can enforce it. Those are the kind of challenges. It gets further added by in India, sometimes the regulatory processes. But all of these are issues which can be solved. And therefore, 6 years ago, we put our hand up. I put my hand up and said, you know what, I'm going to spend my time solving this. That's when we created the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. And we chose, original word was cluster of Hyderabad. We said circle because we said we'll all sit together as equals around the table and we will solve this together. So that was the idea. We called it the circle. My original name for it was Enabling Research and Innovation Circle. And I wanted to call it Enrich. Somebody in the government said, Enrich is for you, rich is better. So it became Rich. And I thought in a way it's good, it's my only hope to be called Rich. So I accepted it. So we try to sit in the middle of research institutions, academic institutions, startups, industry, government, users, etc., and try and bring this whole thing together. But we cannot bring it together if everybody does not participate in that whole process with equal enthusiasm. So there are at least 3 projects that we worked on, but which we have not been able to take up. And all 3 of those involve top national research institutions. One was to map the cancer genome. Second was to study the nutritional connection between your food habits, your genetics, and your gut biome. And how is the whole thing going? The third one was to work with tribals in part of Telangana who have, especially women and children, who have extremely low levels of nutrition levels or extremely high malnutrition levels. By the way, even today in our country, the tribals don't live beyond 33, 34 years. It's a crime. It's a moral crime. And we said, let's try and do something about it. Let's try and see if we can do it. In all of those cases, the reason we have not been able to proceed is that the kind of ideas of the research institutions of what needs to be done versus that of the startups versus that of the implementation agency are coincident. And typically, most of the delay happens at the research. So if research institutions want to get into applications, one of the areas in which they have to take a real hard look is their speed of response. So many times research institutions work over a long-term horizon, quite understandable. The other problem that we face is that when you're doing research, you will not do anything haphazard, you will do till you're 100% satisfied. Many times during applications, 90% satisfaction is given, which again interferes with the mindset. So these are genuine problems we are facing, and I think one of the ways of solving it is to talk to people like you and say, hey, you know what? If you think you are interested in joining in this journey, if you're interested in making, and by the way, one very material reason for all of you to join in this journey is also that budgets for all of us are not going to ever keep growing. They're if anything going to shrink. And therefore, a lot of us will have to generate our own budgets. Second thing is, you have developed something. You may not want to do it yourself, but I'm sure you would love to see its great impact. You know, there are so many of my students, last count, there were 12 students of mine who have become unicorns. I didn't get a single paisa out. But the joy of seeing somebody succeed and something you're involved with succeed is tremendous. The joy of seeing, we were talking about, you know, Anna Bana, start with poor rural tribal girls and can we make them PhDs and can we make them great scientists? The joy of any of those initiatives is the real joy. And I appeal to all of you, try and be participants in that joy. Yes, if your joy is to publish something in the best journal, great. But if you can give a little bit of your time to also think about where it can be, how it can be. By the way, that's yet another challenge for us. How do we not use a lot of your time? Now, if we have all of you, and if all of that is happening, then will it happen? No, not yet. There are legal problems. In our country, you are structured as a society or a trust. There is something called Section 8 company, which is what I am, which is a not-for-profit company. And there are, and what each legal entity can and cannot do are restrictions. So for example, I think you as TIFR are an outstanding design and engineering manufacturing capability. But you cannot manufacture yourself when it goes against your objects. So we have to also find, and fortunately the government is becoming more and more reasonable in some parts of the world. I'm told not in Bombay, but some other parts, certainly in Hyderabad. So we have to also find legally sustainable proper solutions. So I cannot promise you the moon tomorrow. I cannot tell you that all your problems will be solved, but I promise you one thing, that I'd love to partner with all of you to do my best to see how we can overcome this. What I'd also like all of you to think about is, if you have great ideas that you want to see, but don't know where to go, get in touch with me through something. We'll see how we can help you. If you want, after your PhD, to be a part of that ecosystem, but don't know how to approach it, do let me know. I'll be happy to at least try and see whether we can. If you have your own startup idea and want a place to help you start, come and talk to me. Again, I'm happy to help you. In any way in which you want to do something that is going to have a big benefit, I'll be very happy to help you. Fortunately, my organization's costs get paid by the central government, so we do everything free. So there is no cost involved. I'm not trying to sell my services, right? But let us together try and create a future which is much, much better than what it is. Thank you. Can I come and inside? I somehow hate the podium. It's a barrier.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that talk. I want to bring the focus back to that middle category of people you're talking about, who can look at the research and see how that can be turned into practice. Now, one quick question is your organization that middle person? And an associated question is that you said that it's difficult to find those people as well. I mean, should every institution try to have a cell which does this, or should a collection of institutions or a city should do it? How do we actually to solve this?
Yeah. So I think we do. So we are focused primarily because those are the research institutions in Hyderabad. We are focused on food and agriculture, health, and sustainability. We don't look beyond that, but thanks to Ravi and others, I'm slowly moving into things which they are doing. So photonics and laser are kind of, we'll get there. Honestly, I think this thing is, if it is something that an institution is keen to do, I'd rather help them than say, no, I'm stuck into this and I don't care. But what we do is first level. So yes, we have people who can do it, but just take help. It's all the way from genetics to God knows where at the one time, and we are now talking about this thing, antibiotic resistant thing. But it's such a huge. I can't do a capability in all of this, but I can do in some. And then what we like to do is to create volunteer groups. So for example, we now have 16 hospitals and about 45, 50 doctors. So in life sciences, if anybody comes and says, this, I'll find the right doctor, I'll find the right hospital. Similarly, in agriculture, 2/3 of seed companies in the country are in Hyderabad. So if it's something to do with seeds, I'll find somebody. I'll find somebody from the university. On the other hand, if somebody comes to me with an idea and I think I would love to come to one of them and say, can we please find it? The second thing we should do is to encourage a cross flow between industry and research institutions, which is not happening. So I would love to, after seeing today, handpick a few companies and say, hey, you guys go there and see for yourself what's happening. Just get a sense. Unfortunately, that is not happening to the extent that it should happen. But, we should try and do a little more, because the more we have discussions, we have tried to do seminars. So just before COVID, we did one seminar on cancer. We got all the research institutions, whoever was doing. By the way, there were 12 research groups in Hyderabad alone working on cancer who were not talking to each other. So can we at least create research groups? So I think I'm become a big believer in collaboration and partnering. I don't have an answer, but I think the more we do it, the more likely we are to find those gaps. Yeah. Yes, I mean, my feel is that in some of the work that they're doing in your area, there is also, and some in the this thing, quantum computing areas, we will find. But you're right. I mean, the further you are to a concept, the longer is going to be the gestation. And therefore, we have also started. That's why I'm saying that this fad, what I call fad, was only started in the last 2 years, 5-10 years. Right? Before that, our focus was not. It was on publishing. It was on new research. So I think that mindset change. By the way, that's yet another risk, and I think it's unfair. I'd say this. If I joined 25 or 30 years ago, because I joined this institution because it did fundamental research, I think it's unfair to tell me midstream that now you also do translation research. I genuinely think so. I think what we have to do is say, hey, you do your research, let me find others around you who can. But now the culture has already been steeped in doing fundamental research. I know one organization, it's an educational organization, teaches undergrads in IT. And that organization does not allow their undergrad students to do internships in companies, because that's commercializing. How ridiculous is that? By the way, an outstanding institution, research-wise. But so I think we have a series of. My feeling is certainly drug discovery, and that itself is at least all our lives were saved by that one thing. I think aerospace is an area where a lot of research is happening. Whether it can get commercialized to that extent is something I don't know, but aerospace is another big area. We are seeing a lot of good stuff coming out of agriculture. And a lot of our current agriculture level, this thing has come out of agriculture. So those I know. The newer ones in sustainability again is somewhere where I hope, because again, so let me put it slightly differently. Where it is extremely attractive and obvious commercially, you are always going to be where somebody else is going to grab it. So the space available to you is one which is not that obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My question relates to an institution like BRC, which has developed some technologies, but they are still not marketed as much as they should probably be. Take the case of, let's say, desalination of water. I've heard that it was talked about in the context of the shortage of water supply, potable water supply in Madras, Chennai. Similarly, purification of water. For instance, they are marketing devices, but there are devices which are about 5 times more expensive, which are much more popular, it appears. And the other one is about irradiation of food. That has a huge potential, and that I think is, again, maybe organizations like yours should help probably BRC, or BRC should seek your help, whichever way it is.
So I would love to thank you, first of all, and I completely agree with you. The two groups of institution who happen to have humongous technology which is not getting used. One is your ministry, including BARC, and the other is DRDO. Yeah. If you, I'm sure all of you know this, right? If you travel on Indigo and you order that upma, that's DRDO technology. DRDO came out with that technology for Siachen Glacier. DRDO, one scientist in Hyderabad, Dr. Shivaji, and another one in DRDO scientist, came out with a bacteria which eats human waste at those temperatures. That's how our soldiers are able to live there, because you can't even go out to relieve yourself. So they had to create something which, while you stood there, you could eat, and that is a DRDO technology. Now think, if I could use that at room temperatures, all my jhopadpatti problems of waste will be solved. For years, I've been trying to break open DRDO doors. It's not happening. DRDO has, by the way, huge collection of technologies which are really good technologies. So one is, how can we get the government, I'll use a generic term, governments to open up. That's number one. Number two, there is still a socialist mindset in our government. So no government will agree to give you a 100% right to this thing. They'll say, no, you get the technology, but I'll also give it to him and to her and to her. They'll say, forget it. Yeah, I want an exclusive right because I want to commercially exploit it. Right? So we still are stuck with some of those mindsets which are preventing us from, and I don't know why CSIR is open, but DAE and DRDO are still, probably the mindset of defense, which may be true. I mean, I don't know.
Hi, excellent talk. I just had a question. Today, as you said in the cancer part, there are like many atlases coming out of the cancer genome, especially the 1000 cancer genome and the cancer atlas in the US and the UK. Because there is already something like that in the world happening, what are the challenges specific in India? Because the Indian cancer genome, if I may so call it, is actually very important because we have a large number of cancer patients, perhaps more than the US and UK combined. So why? Because it seems an obvious problem to solve. Why is there not enough?
So this is the question I ask myself every day. I mean, these questions, we did not suggest this to the research institutions. All we did was we brought a few groups together and said, what problems do you want to solve? All of these problems were defined by them. One is 3.5 years old, one is 1.5 years old. And another one is about 2.5, 3 years old. I still do not know what is stopping them. Every time I go and say, but what's your problem? I'll send you a one. I said, just send me a one-pager. And at this cancer, this thing, where it was stuck was, we got 2 outstanding research hospitals who happen to have top quality cancer physicians who are passionate about research. We had research institutions 1, 2, 3 research institutions. No, 4 research institutions interested. So we said, Eureka, I mean, we have solved the problem, right? Only thing required was money. We said, we'll raise the money. We know where to go and try and raise the money. Just give us a 1-pager about what we are going to do. Then somebody said, oh, Tata Institute and AIMS are doing the breast cancer. So fine, we'll go below the breast. We'll take the cancers, and in our part of the world, these ones are really prevalent. We say, fantastic. I mean, we'll do that. I don't know. I don't know. Something, I need some trigger, and I'm searching. What is that trigger which would make a scientist say, yes, I want to do this? Now, today I spoke, and I won't look at anybody when I'm answering that question. Today I spoke to one more person who had another great idea. I'll start again. So in my business, you have to be an incurable optimist and a completely shameless optimist who can keep going back. And I don't mind it. I honestly, because I think it's for the great, I'm not getting anything out of it myself. But I like the idea. I think, that man, if we can do this in India, what a great thing it would be. By the way, that is also economically feasible in the long run. Because all that knowledge we can sell to multinational, because increasingly personalized medicine is going to require us to have a much greater, and we can sell it. We had done everything. We had created we had created the model of biobanks. We had created internationally approval. Each one needs to, you need to get, what is the word for it? Informed consent. You need to get informed consent. We said we'll create informed consent in Urdu, in Hindi, in Telugu, in English. We'll do everything. We'll record it. Every single thing is ready except that. So I don't know. Sorry to rave about you, but I do get.
I didn't. Your organization is supposed to talk to research organizations and also to industries, or only to
everyone?
Okay,
anybody and everybody, including government, if that needs to be done.
So then I think then I can ask the question. So you said that for researchers, we should do it for joy, right? I mean, so if you give a similar talk to a multinational or a industry partner institution, how would you motivate them? I mean, so you are asking us that we don't have much incentive. We should do it out of our goodwill. What do you tell them? That's one question. The second question is that you are also suggesting that we should open up, the DRDO should open up, ARC should open up and make the technology, give it to some particular company. What does the government or the population as a whole get back in return from that particular institution? As an example, for example, I think at some point the government was very what they call benign neglect for the IT sector. They gave support, but I don't think the IT sector has come back and in a huge way and supported back the government. So could you comment?
They've created huge number of jobs.
So
millions.
Today, what percentage of our exports come from IT? But more than the exports, part of the reason why Biden is happy to talk to us is because of our strong IT capability. So it also has an enormous geopolitical importance. That's number one, but we'll keep that aside. Nobody is asking any institution to give anything free. DRDO has, there are royalty policies. What are we talking to you people for? So how do we create a way of, but do not, as I said, current scheme of things, you cannot expect more than 1 to 3% of the total value to go to the IP owner. Roughly, that's what it is across the world. But that is 3% more than the zero you're getting now. You got a complete zero. I would turn it other way. I think it's a national crime that you're using my taxpayer money and not using it for the national purpose. I want to ask that question, counter question. You are using taxpayers' money. How are you justifying it? So I think, we have to be responsible. You have a tremendous opportunity to do good. And I think it's everyone's responsibility to be good. Each one of us, I mean, I honestly, I practically don't get paid, but that's a different issue. At my stage in life, I can afford to live like that. But I do it because as I feel passionate about wanting to. And, where would you rather be, here today or in Baiju's owner's chair with? You can get all the money you want. I think we overestimate money. So let me ask you, please do this as a homework. Go and figure out how much money is enough for you in your life. You'll get a house, then you'll want the fanciest car, you'll want to travel anywhere. 20 crores, 50 crores, 100 crores. What are you going to do with $22 billion? What will you do with it, man? I'll tell you, you want to be a billionaire? I'll tell you simple, I'll give you right now.
Well, Saurav.
No, but I'm giving you a chance. You start one company, I start a company. You sell your share to me for 500 million. In return, I will sell you my share for 500 million. On paper, both of us are now $1 billion company. That's what valuation is. They don't have cash. But don't get into this value. This valuation game is a rubbish. It's, a lot of people with a lot of money. There are days when I actually wonder whether it's a Ponzi scheme, but I won't get in there. I'll get caught in this thing. But I think I define a unicorn as an organization that improves the life of 10 crore people. To me, that is a unicorn.
Not $1 billion valuation.
Improve the life of 10 crore people, then you have a right to call yourself a unicorn. Think of how much more sad. You'll get enough money here. Many of the people who have money are not necessarily happy. I deal with so many of them. In my entire social circle, I must be the poorest. But I think I'm amongst the happiest.
Yeah, so here is a second question. How will you pitch this talk to the industrialists who should, the same talk given to them?
I will have to talk to him about returns.
Returns. Okay.
I will have to talk to him about returns, nothing else. He does not have a soul.
Okay. So I think, turning back here, Vivek's question was, BRC tried very hard to commercialize, but I think they were ahead of time. The environment that exists today did not exist earlier, but they have lots of technologies that can actually be commercialized. And I think maybe it's time to relook.
No, but I would love to find,
I think so. We'll get
technically, again, I get paid by the central government, right? And the central government also has this funny phobia. They said, you have to work in and around Hyderabad. I said, why? What's your problem? But I'll try and see if I can come to BARC and try and work.
When you say the central government has a phobia, is it the political class or is it the bureaucracy?
Both.
I don't know, yaar. मैं छोटा आदमी हूँ यार. तो रोता कौन इतने ऊपर जाता है?
Just take the edge from Hyderabad to Hindustan.
No, so I have done that all across. I said, I'd rather do it. And when they slap me on the wrist, I say, oh, you mean I should not? Oh, sorry. But मैंने कर लिया अभी. So, no, I'm happy to break rules. I'm at a stage of my life. Somebody asked me, how old are you? I think I should tell you, right? Well, in 73, I was coming here. So 50 years I've worked already here. Add another 20, 23, whatever it is. Till I graduated from IIM, then you can calculate. You're all good at arithmetic, right? I don't care. This thing is, and I don't know whether this is being recorded.
I think you're being recorded, but feel free to be.
ठीक है. Sometimes we have to stretch the boundaries. I'm not saying don't break, but do stretch the boundaries. Stretch it for a cause. Don't stretch it for a personal gain. Stretch the boundaries. Yeah, what is the worst? You say, sorry, I didn't benefit myself. Organization benefited. Now, problem kya hai tumhara?
Yeah. So
But I'd love to,
yeah, we'll
Dr.
get you in touch
Dadar,
with-
I would love to get in touch with you. I'd love to
somebody
see
in
how
the-
to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I will also explore.
Before I hand it over to you, I just want to say some of you may have been wondering what the connection was. So I just want to say that we've benefited a lot by having him on the board of the Extreme Photonics Innovation Center, which is a TIFR UK venture with £4 million funding set up about 3-4 years ago. And that's where with the new laser system, with the new ecosystem in Hyderabad, and we're trying to develop lots of applications. I mean, basic research, of course, that's done here, but also lots of applications. So I should personally thank him for steering us through that, advising us and doing, setting up several things. But Palit,
Also, my question is that you are focusing on other sectors, like you are and sustainability. Are there similar institutes who are working?
You mean other organizations like
No, so
Focusing on other sectors like health or in like different type of technologies.
So, what happened was in 2016-17, I started Rich. And if you'll allow me, at my age, you should allow me to ramble, eh? I've just told you my age, for God's sake. Come on now. So, when I started, along with J.H. Chowdhury of TI, we started the entire entrepreneurship thing in Hyderabad in 2003, 20 years ago. And there was no entrepreneurship worth talking about in 2003. Probably not even in Bombay. By about 2007, 2008, and we had to work a lot. We had to work with similar, get volunteers, get somebody. What we found was that most people were focused on me too. So if you got Uber, I've got Ola. If you got something, I've got this. If you got Amazon, I've got Flipkart. He said that. So the socialist in me, there is a big socialist in me, decided that we must do the building blocks of the 3 building blocks of the country, which is food, health, and education. Nobody paid attention to me. In that process, I discovered that there are 41 research institutions. But education, thanks to some people, got this thing. So we substituted. So the reason we are focused on those 3 is only because the ecosystem is there. There is nothing that stops me from going beyond that. So when he says, I'm happy to go. But that model was then, the central government liked it. And in the budget of 2019, Nirmala Sitharaman introduced this as a city cluster concept and said that there will be 9 city clusters in the country. Right now, I think there are 7: Bangalore, Pune, Delhi, Bhubaneswar, Jodhpur, and Chandigarh. Surprisingly, there is no Bombay chapter. And of course, the 7th one is Hyderabad, and we were the first. So we can link you to any one of those. The others are a lot far behind us in many respects, simply because we had a head start on everyone. We knew what this whole business was. And we have chosen to take people from all aspects. Most of the others are actually based out of research institutions and therefore get caught up with that research institution philosophy. But if there is something, we'll try our damnedest to find you. Happy to stretch it.
so any more? So I have one last question. So, a country like Israel is such an innovator. I mean, they have great science happening in the country. And it's such a small country and we buy things from them, whether it's electronics, whether it's missiles or whatever that is. So it's always puzzled me. What is in the environment that makes it such a country and what is it that probably we don't have, apart from other problems that we have? What is it that holds us back?
Especially in this place, I will not speculate. I think the Jews as a community have always had that, there's something about them. By the way, the Parsis are very similar. The Jews are extremely intelligent in science and technology, in arts, in philanthropy. So there may be something cultural, just like, but we often underestimate. Compared to the rest of the world, we are probably very, very good in terms of application of science, in terms of willingness to do things, in terms of developing. And we have done it with so little money. A lot of Israel research may have been funded by American Jews from. We have not had that.
And also the
And remember, when I was born, the population of this country was 1/4 of what it is now. We were 350 million people and in abject poverty. When I grew up in Bombay, calculate back, it's 1947. When I grew up in Bombay, we didn't have milk, we didn't have rice. To where we are now, we are 4 times the people. We have done some enormous, tremendous things. Let's not underestimate what we have done. So I think, they also live perennially under the gun, and they also live in a desert, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of their research has come because they have no option. We term this thing as jugada.
Yeah.
But a lot of our rural, by the way, I also spend a lot of time looking at rural innovations and traditional practices. So we've recently put up on UNDP a compendium of 25 Telangana local agricultural practices which are counter to current scientific thinking. And it says, can the science community please look at this and figure out which is right and what is wrong? So there is a lot that is happening in our country. Could it be better? Yes. Do we want it to be a lot better? Yes. But let's not also, berate us. I think this is another, I spent 21 years in Hong Kong. No Chinese would ever say anything bad about their country. And no Indian would ever say anything good about his country.
But we are a democracy, right?
To some extent, it's that also.
So that's a price that we pay. Social entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So is the rich like the social entrepreneurs? I think
So, yes, the social entrepreneurship movement, 2-3 things have happened. The money has got, when there is easy money, nobody wants to give it to hard money. So the easy money has all gone to digital innovations, everything. And if I can get 20% return on stock market, 50% return in venture capital, and you're going to give me 6% return with a double bottom line, chodna. So we are actually not getting funding for social ventures. A lot of really good social ventures is there are some which masquerade as social ventures. Vaccine production is a social venture, but it's also a profitable venture. To me, a social venture is one which is just enough more than the cost of capital, but gives a very big societal impact. And those we are not able to fund.
great. So I think we'll continue our discussions at tea. Let's thank
has been the statement for a long time. We joined for a cup of coffee at the desk. Thank you.